We began this week in worship on Sunday with me preaching from Luke chapter 24, verses 36 to 43, where the risen Christ appears in a room with his apostles and their companions, and they are startled and frightened. And part of how he seeks to dispel their fear is by showing them his resurrected physical body, which even bears the wounds of his crucifixion. And he also takes a piece of broiled fish and eats it in their presence to show that he is not a bodiless ghost or apparition, that he is, in fact, the risen Christ, and he has a physical body. And so we end this week, just the way the timing of things works with our Bible readings, in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, which is all about the resurrection. And in verse 44, Paul says this about the resurrected body. He says, "It is sown a physical body, it is raised a spiritual body." If there is a physical body, there is also a spiritual body. Now, when we talk about, well, our resurrection body, obviously the nature of what that's going to be exactly is a mystery for us, and we just have to accept and acknowledge that. But there are a few things that I believe we can say based on what we know from Jesus' resurrection and from Paul's writings. And the first is that we will have a resurrection body. Christians believe in the resurrection of the body, not just the Greek notion of the immortality of the soul. And there are a number of questions that arise in our minds, or that people have asked me through the years, that relate to this. One is, well, how will I recognize the people I've known in my life in heaven if their physical body is significantly different? Like, how will I know my grandparents? I only knew my grandparents when they were in the final years of their life. What if they look in a much younger state? And my answer to that is always, if there is a heaven and eternal life, God has already worked all these things out, that we'll definitely be able to recognize those we love who have gone before us in the faith, and they will be able to recognize us. A second question that comes up to me more frequently in the last 20 years is it okay to be cremated? Because some people believe, well, if I'm cremated, how can God bodily resurrect me? And my answer to that is, again, well, the God who created the universe is capable of doing pretty much anything. And the idea that God has to have the remains of a physical body, which just through decomposition is down to just bones after a relatively short period of time, of course, God can raise and give us a spiritual body, a resurrected or heavenly body. Because think of, for example, the Christians who were martyred in the Colosseum and in Rome. The very fact that their bodies were completely disappeared, they were consumed by wild animals, that doesn't mean God can't raise those martyrs to eternal life in heaven. So we end this week believing in the physical resurrection of Jesus and affirming that when our time comes, we too will have a spiritual body and we will live with God forever.